Yeah, I think we got the only Bluetooth radio. You actually got to stop to connect it to the phone. Otherwise it's too dangerous. And I don't know, because I was connected last, it might not work. Try it.
Oh, I'm here on the auxiliary, so everything is
Yeah, major complicated. It took now 45 seconds. Let's see if it works.
Yeah, wait a second.
I gotta know.
No, I have no music. Oh, that's not your style of music.
Hell,
I'm in the wrong.
it's also not connected yet. There
It's
you
not
go.
Connecting.
It will.
No.
Okay, then I gotta disconnect
Wait a
mine.
Verbunden? Warte mal, jetzt.
Yeah, now it works.
Yeah.
Okay, it took
So
a minute
you
and
had
20.
You had your Bluetooth on.
Yeah, could be. It took a minute and 20 to connect it. I thought I'm gonna talk about our two cars, because they're really different between each other. And I'm not talking about the Freelander, obviously. I thought I'm gonna talk about the Challenger. Maybe some people who already watched a few videos from us noticed that we also got a black Challenger RT. And we got this car now for probably around 3,000 to 4,000 miles. That's it. It's only licensed in the summertime. And in the summertime, this is supposed to be my daily driver. And Vera gets to drive the Discovery. And she's usually really happy about this. And then the Freelander gets a break over the summertime. And I thought I'm gonna talk about this. Maybe what car we like better. Maybe that's interesting. Well, the biggest difference in between the two cars, next to the technical data, obviously, and I don't need to go into that, comparing a Challenger RT with the Hemi V8 to a 2.5 ton Discovery. The biggest difference is basically the behavior of other people in traffic. That is quite an experience. When we drive around with our Discovery and you just rate how many people, wave you, or how many other people in traffic flash their lights to greet you. When we're around with the Discovery, that happens quite a bit compared to the Freelander, where this is lesser of an event. But in the Discovery, at least every other Discovery flashes lights or waves, and sometimes even a Defender.
A new Defender.
A new Defender. You do get response from other cool overland vehicles, I want to say, who are not Land Rover related. So I'm referring to a Toyota or to a Wrangler. Any kind of overland vehicle greets if they see a rooftop tent. And that makes it very, very pleasant to drive around. And being on vacation, it makes it feel appreciated, and that's a nice feature about the Discovery. I don't know what other people think when you drive around with a rooftop tent, but I would assume they go, oh well, look, these guys are, got their car all prepped for vacation, and I would say it puts a smile on their face. Now that's the Discovery life, or the life of an overlander. Well, with the Challenger, this is completely different. If you would compare cars to people, then the Challenger would be the riot guy sitting in a bar wearing his leather jacket and having a tattoo up his neck and a piercing in his eyebrow. Yeah, the other muscle cars, like for example, I'm sorry to say this, but this is again out of comparing people to cars in Germany. The Ford Mustang. The Ford Mustang guy is more like the good-looking manager, and he's got a lot of money, and he's sure married. Versus again, the Challenger is kind of the riot guy, and every woman looks at him in the bar and says, "Oh, geez, And this is kind of the response you get from people when you drive around with the Challenger, there is, I don't know if it's appreciation, but there is a response. And that response is there everywhere here in Germany. Compared to the Discovery, I don't get a lot of waves and flashing lights, but I do get a lot of response. I get people just looking up and looking behind the car, and it makes that car nice to drive, for sure. It raises eyebrows. I mean, the engine noise and just the sheer look of it, and then it's so rare in Germany. There are, in the area where we live, we know about that there are 3 of them, compared to a Mustang, which is almost the car you see every day. And the Mustang is by far technically the better vehicle to drive in Germany, especially because it's imported by Ford and you have a real service network, and everybody knows the performance of a Mustang, especially the newer models. Not talking about engine power, beat a Challenger by far. The car is just much more sporty and has just a way better suspension, at least out of the serial condition, without doing any mods.
But at the end of the day, while the Challenger is the better muscle car, the Mustang is the better sports car.
And frankly, both are better than the Camaro SS.
And the older Challengers like mine is a 2009, is more like a tugboat with a big engine, and it's not made so well to corner tight turns, but it is extremely fun to drive in tight turns. It's like where you feel like you're driving 120 miles an hour all the time. But in reality, there's a Fiat 500 following you. Doesn't matter. It's about the feel and the enjoyment of driving. So I swaved off. People's reaction. I think driving the Challenger, people's reactions beat the Discovery. But again, it's a different kind of reaction. It's that reaction where mothers want to take their kids off the road and put them inside and close the shades. Men being afraid of getting in a bar fight when you come with that car. And women looking at you, looking at the car. Oh geez, who's coming there? From that feel, it does beat a ride with the Discovery. Unfortunately, I have to say that. And talking about other defenders flashing their lights when you drive around with the Discovery, it never happens, okay? Again, a defender driver is not gonna lower himself down to greet the Discovery driver, right? Unless the Discovery flashes his lights first or waves first, of course, then the defender driver will show his appreciation. But what never happens is that a Mustang driver is flashing his lights first when he sees a Challenger driver. It doesn't happen. I mean, it did not happen to me once, and there's so many Mustangs driving around here. And I can only think, why are they not recognizing another American muscle car? And the only explanation I have, I hope I'm not losing so many subscribers now. It's like, again, they kind of think, okay, I bought the conservative muscle car and it's high-end and it's got the better technical data, but it just doesn't have that riot look to it. And I think that's the reason. That's tough, but that's exactly the feeling I got when I drive around with the Challenger. It's definitely not a technically advanced car. Mine got all sorts of issues. All the known issues from the 2009 series, and I kind of live with them. I tried to fix some of them, but I gave up. The parts are just not available, and the issues, when you research them in the internet, you find out that they are part of this car and they don't go away. So I'm talking about the differential clunking noise and, you know, the sticky transmission and the gear grind and, you know, the bouncy, very, very hard suspension and, you know, the car not starting up when it's in the mood because the relay is blocked. And, well, I could go on. There are a couple of issues, but they all fall under the category character, I think. Because I knew it when I bought the car. You know, the guy told me, don't you come back and complain about the differential. And I said, well, I don't feel it. But sure, you know, down the road, driving the car, you know, once you get more used to that stick shift and so on, and to the high torque, you do start to feel that differential clonk. So it got all sorts of issues, and I'm convinced a Mustang doesn't have any of those. I'm convinced the Mustang, even though I never drove one, is comparable to a German high-power car. I mean, it sure looks that way. It's way more advanced compared to my 2009, which has, you know, the interior of a German car out of the 1990s. I mean, one electric feature it got is it turns the interior light on when you open the doors. And another one is it has electric power windows in the front. So, really cool features, but it ends quickly there. Holy crap, it got a temperature gauge. And then comparing the two further, you got to talk about the drivability, the daily driving capability of the vehicles. And I'm not talking about horsepower or gas consumption. Gas consumption isn't really that important to me. I don't drive, you know, large distances to work. And I also think you get used to it at one point. So the drivability of the Discovery is very simply said, when I come home from work and I took the Discovery to work, I come home and I'm so relaxed. It's like I'm coming from vacation, even though I worked 9 or 10 hours. Well, that's different when I come home driving with the Challenger to work, especially if there was some Golf GTI following me. Then I come home and I basically gotta smoke a cigarette first, and I'm shaking, and I'm everything else but relaxed. That car is just not relaxing to drive. Man, you gotta love this chrome, don't you? We keep it in force till we around this turn, because this is kind of scary, at least for me it is. And we're gonna floor it to the next turn. There is 100, fifth gear. We're gonna tap 120. That's 120, where I start to complain. 130, 100. Okay, now she starts crying. I know it's horrible. I know. It's okay.
This guy is horrible.
Well, it was way faster than the Discovery even goes. And for most of the days, you know, on a regular day, I enjoy this a lot. And I don't miss the Discovery. But there are days, like a rainy day, where this driving behavior of the Challenger becomes stressful. In turns and going through the wood on wet roads, it's definitely not a daily driver, no matter what people say. I mean, the reason is very simple. You're the slowest one going to work. There's so many people making these videos where they promote this as a daily driver. And then they use the words, oh, the car is so comfortable. It's such a comfortable car. And you got such a great view around. Boy, I tell you, the last thing I want to hear is that I bought me a Dodge Challenger and it's a comfortable car. I think this is the most horrible and uncomfortable car you can possibly drive. I had
I had a Volkswagen Beetle before, which was more comfortable than this car.
Under certain road conditions, it doesn't meet the criteria daily driver. Not to mention parking this thing in Germany. I mean, parking it is a challenge on its own. I think that's why it's called a Challenger. It's surprising that mine isn't all bumped up around it and I never scratched it, but that's because I don't really park, because parking doesn't work. I kind of look for spots where I can just stop. And when you want to, back it into a parking spot and you turn the steering wheel all the way to one end, then that limited slip differential comes into play. Now that is one feature. What it basically does, it has two wheels locked to each other up to a certain torque. Probably good for the drag strip. I mean, the car is called Road and Track. But when you want to do a sharp turn reversing into a parking spot, it's very likely that you stall the engine on the manual stick transmission because it just doesn't want to go back. It's like you have your handbrake closed. And that doesn't cope with daily driving. So I don't want to complain, but this is about comparing the daily driving ability between the Discovery and the Challenger, and I'm trying to be honest. So the daily driving ability, the Challenger does lose big time. Well, the next thing, just as important, is how big of a smile does a car put on your face? And I gotta say up front, this point goes to the Challenger. There is no other car. What? I'm telling the truth. There is no other car getting a smile on your face than the Challenger. This is just so amazing. I mean, and I'm not talking about myself. I do get a lot of driving visitors with this car, so friends who I take on or pick up somewhere, and then I just let them drive. I say, oh, you want to drive? That's no problem. Go ahead, drive it. I mean, I got insurance. They probably don't pay, but you can drive it. So I had all kinds of people driving this car. Young people and people out of the family, my brother and so on. And they all drive it really careful in the beginning because it's, with that sticky stick shift and the gear grind and the rattling transmission, and then the really unbearable amount of torque when you just try to start it kind of soft in traffic, which is kind of difficult with the manual transmission. But once they are on a country road and after 10 minutes they got used to it a little bit, and then I encourage them, well, why don't you floor it now? And when they do the first time, and I always look in their face, and you get a reaction which is just unbelievable. It might be common and not as superb for people living in the States, where there are a lot of muscle cars around and everybody grew up with a 350 and having that from his dad and took it to high school and so on. That's probably different. But over here in Germany, a V8 is really, really rare. And a naturally aspirated V8 with a large volume engine, so a US V8 engine, is rare. And most people never drove it. And there are so many people over here who only drove a 1.6 liter fuel injected gasoline engine in a 900 kilogram car. Okay? Yeah, they quick around corners and they get you there, and they even sporty and fun to drive, but it just does not compare. And when you get them to drive for the first time in a naturally aspirated V8 with a lot of torque, then the reaction is just priceless. It's unbelievable. And that's what I call putting a smile in your face. On a nice sunny day, driving this car home from work, even after a stressful day, sure does get me a smile on my face. And it beats the Discovery. The Discovery gets me a relaxed look. And I'm happy to drive the car. And I'm, looking forward to drive it again on the next day. But the Challenger, man, it makes me get up in the morning. When the sunlight comes out and it hits through the window, especially in the summertime, it can't be 5 o'clock. I'm up. I want to get into the car. I want to turn that ignition key and get going with it. And it's unfair. It's an unfair comparison. Because the Discovery is really, I mean, if I would talk about driving relaxed, then again, the Discovery is not to beat. It's made for the Queen to drink a cup of tea in the back seat. That's what it's made for. It's quiet and you can drive 15 hours non-stop, no problem. And with the Challenger, at least me, in my age, I'm beat after an hour or two. Because I drive fast. I would go up this road here. Vera drives now almost 50. Almost 50. With my Challenger, we would have 110 on this road. Between turns for sure. It would just go. And that's why she doesn't want to drive it with me. At least not as a passenger. That's just no fun for her. And yeah, I thought I shared this because it's an unusual combination, at least over here in Germany. And I got to think of the next category. So yeah, the next category, it's my favorite one. And Vera knows, oh, now if he starts talking about that, he's not going to stop. That's about character.
Oh, yeah.
Now, it's hard to say what describes character in a car. You know, I have this friend in Michigan. He works in a drive shaft factory making drive shafts, and he's got a couple of Italian machines.
Shit, they're deers.
And yeah, they're Dias. He's got a couple of Italian machines, and sometimes they broke. And when he calls the technician over, and he comes there and he looks at the machines and he does a bunch of stuff, and then he pushes the start button and it's running again. And then my friend Dave, he goes, well, what was broke? And the Italian technician would say, Maschine is not broke. Maschine nur have a character. So that is, I think, what character means in a car. It is not necessarily designed into it. It's things which basically cause a reaction from other people on the outside, and things which were not supposed to be like this, but they turned out to be kind of positive and accepted as if it's a flaw, if it is a nice feature or not. It is if the car has something special to it. And the character goes across the entire bandwidth. It goes from the technology over the flaws and over the emotions. And I think mainly the emotions. And if you compare the character of a Discovery, but it is almost too well made to consider for a lot of character. The car is not strong enough for that. It's not loud enough, and the flaws are not well accepted enough. They still considered annoying, and people reactions are still quite normal, because there's so many cars who compete with a Discovery, and they would have more character, like a Jeep Wrangler, for example, or a Defender. So it is very likely that this point is going to go towards my Challenger, because that car does prove to have character on when I drive it every day. I mean, first of all, the flaws I'm living with, the sticky transmission, which is so unbelievable that sometimes when you stop on a traffic light and you kind of roll downhill a little bit and you have the first gear in, it won't let you take that first gear back out. It says, no, I'm keeping it. You're not pulling that stick in neutral now because I got the last word. Oh, and the same can happen on the second gear. So then you got to take off in the second gear when you're on a traffic light, going downhill, little rolling into it and so on. So I live with that and I know it. So while I'm rolling, I'm taking it out of gear. And that falls under character. An unfair point is to add in the muscle car growl. Again, this is addictive. And that makes it, for me, again, extremely exciting to drive that car. But not a fair comparison anyway. Hopefully, those people who inched around the subscribe button now didn't back off it now, because I'm talking like this about a discovery. But I thought I want to tell the story about my two completely different cars. And I want to cover one more point, and I think then I'm done boring everyone. And that is, what car will I keep longer? And there, 100% for sure, the Discovery is winning that race. I feel like I'm gonna keep this car. I'm gonna drive it to the junkyard. I'm gonna have it forever until the German TÜV will separate us.
And then we'll get the next one.
You bet. Now, what would I recommend now? Well, I would recommend that you buy a car which wakes up your emotions. It gotta wake emotions. I think that's the most important thing. At least to me, a car is not something what gets me from A to B, or what needs to be economical, feasible, or cheap, or takes less gas, or is more reliable, or easier to fix. None of those criterias are valid for me. I always say, well, certain cars, if I would win them in the lottery, I would put them up on eBay on the same day, even if they are 10 times better than the car I have. If they don't wake my feelings, they are not for me. And that's what my recommendation would be for everyone, is to buy the car you're really in love with. If it's, the car from your dad when you were 10 years old, or if it's just a car you saw on the road, do everything you can and buy it. And that's my recommendation to everyone. Don't wait. If you're in love with a car, you should go out and get it.